Have you ever pondered about the intricate workings of the human brain and how a slight alteration can cause such significant impacts? John, on an ordinary day, experienced a sudden feeling of terror. This was not due to any external threat, but was the result of a simple partial seizure, a type of seizure that can trigger intense emotions. John's brain, in the throes of this seizure, sent him signals of dread and fear, even though there was no apparent danger. Seizures can manifest in different ways. For instance, some individuals may experience unusual sensations during a seizure. This is due to the areas of the brain controlling our senses being affected. Imagine feeling a non-existent breeze on your skin, hearing phantom sounds, or experiencing distortions in your vision. These peculiar sensations are not figments of the imagination, but the result of simple partial seizures impacting different sensory areas of the brain. In rare instances, simple partial seizures can even trigger feelings of joy, happiness, anger, or rage. The brain, after all, is the control center of our emotions. When a seizure strikes the part of the brain responsible for these feelings, it can create an emotional roller coaster. However, it's crucial to note that not everyone will have identical experiences. The effects of seizures can vary greatly from person to person. Some individuals, like John, might only experience one seizure in their lifetime. Others may have several seizures, each with different manifestations and impacts. To sum up, seizures are complex neurological events that can present in a multitude of ways. They can trigger a range of emotions, cause unusual sensations, and alter perceptions, all depending on which part of the brain is affected. While the experience can be frightening and disorienting, understanding the nature of seizures and their effects can help demystify these occurrences and provide insight into the extraordinary workings of the human brain. Remember, knowledge is power. The more we understand about conditions like seizures, the better equipped we are to support those who experience them.
So now in part 2 of hands or legs shaking, dropping of things, staring, falling down, we will see some more informations and facts on different types of seizures, their possible causes and different ways of manifestation, etc. Those who have not yet watched the part 1 of the subject, I sincerely recommend to watch it for a detailed, comprehensive understanding of the subject. The link is provided in the description. Thanks, and let's start.
Believe me, here more than 70% of the battle is won, because the real big problem is not seizures but the inability of doctors to correctly diagnose for majority of the patients, and the two for long periods like a year to a few years, meanwhile making the patients to do all kinds of tests, emptying their pockets and leaving them emotionally hollow and frustrated and still wondering what actually is happening to them. So now I am going to address the issue of focal seizures without loss of consciousness. They are also called focal onset aware seizures, because this is where the doctors fail a lot. These are caused due to any kind of injury to the brain, either due to abuse or accident. People who have had a head injury, brain infection, stroke, or brain tumor can experience focal seizures without loss of consciousness. When people have focal aware seizures, they are fully awake, alert, and able to recall events during the seizure. Some are frozen during the seizure, so they may or may not be able to respond to others during the seizures. Overall, these seizures are brief, usually lasting less than 2 minutes. Please keep in mind that tingling and numbness from a pinched nerve can be mistaken for focal seizures. Hallucinations, smells, tastes, sounds, visions can accompany psychiatric illness or the use of certain drugs. Some symptoms, such as déjà vu, are experienced by almost everyone at some time. Temporary numbness or weakness in a limb or the face sometimes occurs from a transient ischemic attack (TIA), which can be a serious warning sign for a future stroke. Migraines, with or without a significant headache, can produce visual, tingling, or other symptoms that can be confused with a seizure. Focal seizures without loss of consciousness fall under the category of partial seizures. In partial seizures, the electrical disturbance is limited to a specific area of one cerebral hemisphere side of the brain. Partial seizures are subdivided into simple partial seizures, in which consciousness is retained, and complex partial seizures, in which consciousness is impaired or lost. People who have simple partial seizures do not lose consciousness during the seizure. During a simple partial or Jacksonian seizure, the person does know what is happening, but still has no control over what goes on. Usually, all that is involved is the sudden trembling or jerking of a limb, but sometimes the movement starts gradually. A finger starts twitching, then another, then the whole hand, and finally, the entire arm. This probably feels very strange, since, as said before, the person is aware that it is happening and cannot stop it. Another type of partial seizure affects the emotional centers only, causing inappropriate tears, laughter, or anger.
However, some people, although fully aware of what's going on, find they can't speak or move until the seizure is over. They remain awake and aware throughout. Sometimes they can talk quite normally
to other people during the seizure. And they can usually remember exactly what happened to them while it was going on. Some people may have just one seizure and others may have several.
It is important to remember that seizures after treatment and the patient being completely cured, for example of hand twitching, shaking and pain, can manifest after 2, 3, or 4 years in other forms like staring, losing strength all of a sudden, and falling down. Repetitive actions or speech, etc.
However, simple partial seizures can affect movement, emotion, sensations, and feelings in unusual and sometimes even frightening ways. Emotions. A sudden feeling of fear or a sense that something terrible is about to happen may be caused by a simple partial seizure in the part of the brain which controls those emotions. In rare cases, partial seizures can produce feelings of anger and rage, or even sudden joy and happiness. Sensations. All 5 senses, touch, hearing, taste, smell, and sight, are controlled by various areas of the brain. Simple partial seizures in these areas can produce odd sensations such as a sense of a breeze on the skin, unusual hissing, buzzing or ringing sounds, voices that are not really there, unpleasant tastes, strange smells, also usually unpleasant, and, perhaps most upsetting of all, distortions in the way things look. For example, a room may suddenly seem narrower, or wider, than it really is. Objects may seem to move closer or get farther away. Part of the body may appear to change in size or shape. If the area of the brain involved with memory is affected, there may be disturbing visions of people and places from the past.
Sudden nausea or an odd, rising feeling in the stomach is quite common. Stomach pain also may, in some cases, be caused by simple partial seizures. Episodes of sudden sweating, flushing, becoming pale, or having the sensation of goose flesh are also possible. Some people even report having out-of-body experiences during this type of seizure. Time may seem distorted as well. In many ways, our usual, comfortable sense of familiar things and places may be disrupted by a simple, partial seizure.
Well-known places may suddenly look unfamiliar. On the other hand, new places and events may seem familiar or as if they've happened before, a feeling called déjà vu. Simple partial seizures can also produce sudden, uncontrolled bursts of laughter or crying. Complex partial seizures. Complex partial seizures affect a larger area of the brain than simple partial seizures, and they affect consciousness. During a complex partial seizure, a person cannot interact normally with other people, is not in control of his or her movements, speech or actions, doesn't know what he or she is doing, and cannot remember afterwards what happened during the seizure. Although someone may appear to be conscious because he or she remains standing with eyes open and moving about, it will be an altered consciousness, a dreamlike, almost trance-like state. A person may even be able to speak, but the words are unlikely to make sense and he or she will not be able to respond to others in an appropriate way. Although complex partial seizures can affect any area of the brain, they often take place in one of the brain's 2 temporal lobes. Because of this, the condition is sometimes called temporal lobe epilepsy.
Psychomotor epilepsy is another term doctors may use to describe complex partial seizures. Typically, a complex partial seizure starts with a blank stare and loss of contact with surrounding. This is often followed by chewing movements with the mouth, picking at or fumbling with clothing, mumbling and performing simple unorganized movements over and over again. Sometimes, people wander around during complex partial seizures. For example, a person might leave a room, go downstairs and out into the street, completely unaware of what he or she was doing.
In rare cases, a person might try to undress during a seizure, or become very agitated, screaming, running, or making flailing movements with his arms or bicycling movements with his legs. Other complex partial seizures may cause a person to run in apparent fear, or cry out, or repeat the same phrase over and over again. Actions and movements are typically unorganized, confused, and unfocused during a complex partial seizure.
However, if a complex partial seizure suddenly begins while someone is in the middle of a repetitive action like dealing cards or stirring a cup of coffee, he or she may stare for a moment, then continue with the action during the seizure, but in a mechanical, unorganized kind of way. So now it is ample clear as to what focal seizure without loss of consciousness and its different types are. So now let's concentrate on the treatment/cure. So we will see the solutions, medicines, cures, in part 3 with the title Hands or Legs Shaking, Treatment/Cures. The link will be provided in description and even posted in comments section.
Thank you for watching.
Thanks for watching.